As I've said multiple times on the show, I hate Arsenal the most of any Premier League team. I hate them. Uh, it this result boiled my blood. I'll be honest. Like it is up and down, top to bottom, a calamity. It has to be said. It's a managerial calamity. It's a calamity by the players. It's a calamity of mentality. They're like, I tweeted this, and a lot of people were giving me stick for it, but I believe it. It seemed like we came in tentative and hesitant to play a 15th place Arsenal team who were playing their quote unquote B roster. Now, Dan will argue whether this is their lineup going forward or whatever, and like, fair enough, whatever. But Pablo Mari and Bukayo Saka, who is a talented guy, typically aren't starters, right? They were playing a lot of youth today because injuries, COVID, and terrible performances all year. And we went in there like they were prime Barcelona and capitulated. It was a bad performance from the outset. I was worried about this one all week. I had a bad feeling at the pit of my stomach when I typically have a bad feeling in the pit of my stomach. Usually results like this happen, so blame me, I suppose. But this infuriated me beyond belief. These are the types of games that if you're Chelsea Football Club, Dan, and you're quote unquote serious about the title, hashtag why not us, that you cannot lose these games. You cannot even come close to losing these games. A draw would have been unacceptable today. And to go out and just get smashed like this it's tough.
This is more why not question mark us period versus why not us period or question mark. Like this is absolutely down to us not coming into the game ready to take on a side that wanted it more. This comes down to the fact that Arsenal, without Willian, without David Luiz, who were both, potentially not necessarily feeling symptoms, so they self-isolated out, pre-match to make sure that they would not infect the squad. Gabriel was, kind of pulled out because of potential COVID exposure as well. So like this side, from an Arteta perspective, was cobbled together. Like everything that you would anticipate from a domino effect should be like, Aubameyang, Pierre Aubameyang is not starting, right? Like Lacazette's up there. Martinelli is starting his first Premier League game of the season, right? Xhaka is coming back off of a suspension here. Like all of these things would tell you that this Arsenal side and this Arsenal team were there for the taking, were there ready to be exposed, particularly when you also have Chilwell, Reece James back in the side. You have pretty much the entirety of your preferred starting 11 outside of Ziyech available in this match. You would expect, just on a lineup perspective, I mean, no one was talking about prior to the match that like the question marks were, are Chilwell and James fit enough? And if they are, it's great because ultimately this ultimately is the lineup we would want to see, Brandon. But at the end of the day, it wasn't enough, and I actually think it was clear that Arsenal wanted this a little bit more than our Chelsea side did.
A little.
Yeah, they wanted it a lot more.
Look, that's the brightest I think Arsenal started all season, and I think it surprised the team. I don't think Chelsea players were ready for that, and again, I don't know if that's because Frank didn't prepare them. I don't know if they just weren't mentally prepared because it was a struggling Arsenal that had a ton of changes, and they just thought they would kind of show up and go through the motions to get it done. But they came out chasing. They came out hungry. To your point, you've got Emile Smith-Rowe, 20-year-old, right? Gabriel Martinelli, super young. Lacazette hasn't really played as much anymore. And then, in the back line, you got Pablo Mari and Kieran Tierney, young guys, Bukayo Saka, looking to make an impression in the match, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, they almost scored in the first 2 minutes, against us, and it was kind of back to the ropes from the beginning. So there's a lot of different things we can talk about, but I was so surprised, gentlemen, that Reece James and Ben Chilwell were playing. Now, look, maybe Lampard played mind games with Chilwell and the seriousness or lack thereof of his injury. But you can't pretend like Reece James and his injury wasn't serious. The way it was reported, the amount of people reporting on it, like he very clearly was close to having surgery. They're opting to go with pain management and see if he can get on. If this is the Reece James dealing with pain right now, you might as well go through the surgery and get him fixed, because this is not a Reece James that is it is a shadow of himself. He got absolutely picked apart today. Nick, you feel like they targeted that side? Mainly it's because Timo Werner's in front of him and didn't defend it all. I think there's a lot of different things. Me personally, I'm going to come back to midfield, but I'll at least throw it out to you. You had said that, you know, Lampard could potentially get a lot of blame after this game if they don't get hurt. It didn't look like they're hurt, but Reece James looked like he was about 40%. And mentally, he wasn't there either, with, I think is what you can blame for the, albeit soft, a pen that he gave up. And so the decision-making was off. Physically, he was significantly off. And I think that was a gamble that you could point at that and say, hey, this is a gamble that Frank made. And I really don't think you needed to make that gamble when you have Aspie in the waiting.
That's the whole point, right? It like, I get Chilwell a little bit more. Emerson's not a like-for-like replacement. Emerson's a whole different player. You probably need to adjust your whole lineup for Emerson to take advantage of his skills. Aspie's the captain of the fucking club. He's a veteran. He's there for this match. He knows how to play this match. He's done it a bunch. And part of the deal with Reece today that was so infuriating is, like, clearly he's not there, but I think the mind also went with the body. The positioning was awful all day. Like, there's one moment that it almost led to a goal, but we got bailed out because of a poor shot where he tried to jump in front of a kind of a long pass down the wing, completely whiffed, and left acres of space for Saka to run into. And it's the problem, Dan, with Reece is that even if he's still learning and growing, you know, into the position, you know, from a tactical perspective, let's say, his body overcompensates for every, you know, little mistake that he typically can make. And when his body's not able to do that kind of stuff, those kinds of errors get really exposed. And that is I think the problem that you have is, like, and again, it feels like I'm just throwing the whole team onto. That's not what I'm doing here. It's just, this is one of the 15,000 things that went wrong today.
But it ended up being a big one, to your point, right? When Reece is broken, he has no support from Timo. When his decision making's off, I don't know if it was a game plan, because Arsenal said, shit, if Reece plays, let's attack him because we know he's not 100%. Like, they're elite level footballers. They could have made that change on the fly, but it ended up being a mistake that was repeated over and over and over, and it was not rectified. And he was not able to dig himself out of the match today. And I think that was a huge problem that we had.
Well, and that's you hit on a good point there, which is that
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to say that I was actually, I man the Twitter account, right? And so I'm like looking at things real time and watching, some of our previous guests talk about what's going on and getting their perspective on it. Granda Schmidt, who's been on the podcast before, was talking a lot about, like, what happens when Timo is on the right versus Timo on the left and Pulisic on the right. Pulisic at least tracks a little bit back, is willing to do a little bit more defensively than what Timo is. And so when you bring Timo onto the right and put Pulisic on the left, which is great from an attacking sense, but you bring Timo onto the right from a defensive sense, you are giving James an abundance of work to do relative to what he would do when Pulisic is on the right-hand side trying to help and support in that regard. And so, it's already enough of an ask to do a 1v1, just in general within, top level football. But now you're saying do a 2-on-1. And that's a bit more of an ask for any player to be in that position and challenge it, particularly when they're working their way back from a fitness and an injury issue. And this knee issue seems like it's going to be more of a pain management issue moving forward. But I do think the question can be asked now of whether or not it was right to start Reece, particularly the fact that we're going to have Aston Villa coming up here on Monday, who are a ascending side in the Premier League at this moment, when Aspie as a deputy, if you're talking about needing a little bit of defense, needing a little bit of stability, would have potentially been a more solid option to really secure that right-hand side, and would have allowed Timo to play further forward in that regard and not worry about some of the defensive responsibility. I think that's the real question here, Nick, is if we could have set ourselves up with, a better formation or a better lineup to go out with. Again, hindsight's 2020. No one was questioning it at the beginning outside of, are they healthy enough?